Hi, welcome. Welcome to the CTU Arts Committee. We're going to be getting started in a few minutes, but we are so glad that you're all joining us. I am Gina Slakowski. I'm the committee chair, and we are all really excited to be presenting our remote learning plan to everybody today. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming and attending the CTU Arts Committee. We are really excited to hear what everybody has to say, and we are really excited to share this plan with you. We've been working on it pretty much the entire summer. So we have a lot of committed arts educators as part of our committee, and if you would like to join the committee, you can always feel free to. You can go to the committee forms in the CTU website, and we will happily take more members. We are a dedicated bunch, though. And we are very happy to have everybody here today. Please consider joining our committee. We do have subgroups for all of the different disciplines of art, so we have a lot of equity of voice within our group, and we are more than happy to have lots more teachers. And again, thank you for taking your afternoon and coming out to listen to our webinar and to hear about our remote learning plan. We would like to present this to the Department of the Arts, and we want to make sure that we have equity of voice within all of the art teachers. Okay, so I think everybody is here. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking your time to attend today's webinar. The members of the CTU Arts Committee have dedicated a great deal of time this summer to put together this remote learning plan. Please do not think of this as a cookie cutter sort of one plan fits all approaches. This plan is not specific to your school or your arts programs. It is designed to be an overarching plan for all of remote learning instruction throughout CPS schools. We want to teach with equity and fidelity, and we feel like we've put together a plan that allows for instruction with those things. So at this point, I would like to introduce Jen, who from the Chicago Teachers Union.
Thanks, Gina. Appreciate you. My name's Jen Johnson. I'm the CTU Chief of Staff, and I'm lucky to be the staff liaison to the CTU Arts Committee. And it's been a pleasure meeting with them very regularly over the last several months to really think about how do we, as a union, advocate for arts education, and also for whatever school reopened as, that it was going to be good for arts education and for arts educators. And so these guys actually worked on two plans. They worked on a plan for hybrid return, and they worked on a remote learning plan. And I think all of us would have liked to have had the answer to how we were going to open the school year remotely a month ago. These guys were working at that point. CPS, however, wasn't ready, and we all had to advocate to ensure that the school year opened in the most safe fashion. So, you know, it's good that we're opening remotely, and we know that that is going to entail some challenges. We're in the midst of bargaining with CPS over how remote learning actually looks. We're trying to land kind of critical top level agreements with them to protect our members and to make sure that this remote learning is effective, engaging, as Gina said, equitable, but also humane. We know we can do it better this fall than we had to do in a rushed way in the spring, but we also know that we have to respect that people are still dealing with multiple challenges in their home life, and also many of our members are parents themselves, right? And so we want to make sure that we're advocating for remote learning that actually works better for people in their actual everyday lives. And part of that is advocating that our families have the support that they need, right? We actually need families to have access to affordable housing, affordable healthcare, to be able to survive and not lose income and lose their jobs. So we've got to advocate for both quality remote learning and for the conditions that make our schools and our students safe. So these guys are going to present their proposed plan, and you all should know that this is going to inform the CTU bargaining team. And we're here to get your input as fellow arts educators. We want to make sure that what we're advocating for makes sense to you. And we know we're running out of time. We need CPS to take us seriously, to listen to us, and to make their remote learning plan, like I said, effective, engaging, equitable, and humane. So I think we will be joined at some point by a CTU officer, so I'll just have to break in when that happens and we'll make it work. But I think we are going to get started with our presentation. But before we do that, yes, thank you for the housekeeping note. If you look at your Zoom screen, you should have a button at the bottom that says Q&A. And we have several arts educators and a couple CTU staff organizers on hand who are going to try to help answer some of your questions. So if you click that panel, you'll be able to ask questions throughout the presentation and you'll get a live answer. We'll do our best. Obviously, everything is not answerable right now. We're in a period where there are still unknowns, but we also want to make sure we're responsive to you. So our arts educators are going to present. We're going to get your feedback using the poll function as well. A poll will appear on the screen. And we'll definitely have some time for questions as well at the end. So I'm going to pass it back to our arts educators who are going to present, and they will introduce themselves when they start. Who's our first presenter? Gina, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Jen. Katrina Barge, Whitney Huber, and Fabian Lopez will be the presenters today. Thank you so much for presenting, guys, and all of your dedication and hard work.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Fabian Lopez from Hurley Elementary School. You guys can hear me okay, right? Awesome. So today we're going to be presenting to you some of the things that we came up with our remote learning plan. Just as a reminder, this remote learning plan is available to you in the member link portal. So if you would like to follow along with us, you may do so or have a copy for your own record. And again, as we said before, you will be able, as we're going through the slides, you'll be able to go through and ask questions on the Q&A. Do we have the presentation up? I don't see it. Oh, it's coming up now. Okay, awesome. And you can go to the next slide where it says instructional needs. Awesome, thanks, Nate. So we're gonna be looking first at instructional needs for teachers in our presentation today of what we might need during remote learning. We'll be addressing instructional needs for students in just a bit. And on the PDF, this would be starting on page 2 if you're following along. You can go to the next slide.
And guys, the PDF that Fabian is referring to is the text of the slides is actually available already in the CTU's member link portal on the CTU website. So we will drop that link for you, but you can also access it after this meeting is over. Go ahead, Fabian.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, so these are requested teacher supplies for all art subjects, and we'll get more specific to each art subject when we discuss student needs in just a moment. But for all arts teachers, we're requesting that CPS provide the technology needed to produce videos for instruction. And our ideal would be for each arts teacher to receive an iPad Pro or Adobe Access with a GoPro and or a document camera. We're also advocating for access to our school buildings, so arts teachers have the options to film video lessons from our instructional spaces if needed. And we know that video and photos are the venues for performance and exhibition during remote learning. And so for all arts teachers, we're requesting a media consent form specific to digital participation in the arts. We need a comprehensive document signed by parents that tells us who can be photographed and filmed, and how these files can be shared. We're also requesting that these forms be signed and made available to arts teachers by week 5, so that'll be the 5th week of school. And ideally, this information would be available in Aspen in conjunction with our class rosters. We can go to the next slide. So next, we're going to take a brief look at some of our health and sanitation needs for preparing some of the class supply packs that we have come up with for arts materials that will be distributed to our students. Again, this just pertains to remote learning. Next slide, please. Yeah, there we go. We are requesting vinyl or nitrile gloves, 1 box of masks, and hand sanitizer for each arts teacher to use while creating these supply packs for every student, and 2-gallon Ziploc bags per student for both elementary and high school. If there are other supplies that you think might be necessary for safely preparing supply packs for our students, please jot them down in the Q&A, and you'll be able to list them in our feedback and our exit slip at the end of the session. We're also going to be taking a poll, I believe, at this time. And this poll reads, we want to know, do you feel this list of health and safety needs is sufficient for preparing student kits or packets for remote arts learning? So if you could just take a moment to take that poll. It's a yes or no question. Take about 20 more seconds for you to answer that poll. Okay, yes, if you could show those results, Nate, that would be great. Okay, so the poll results show here that about 88% feel that the list of health and safety needs is sufficient, and about 12% no, 64 to 9. Thank you for taking that poll. We're going to take one other quick poll that we needed to do earlier at the beginning, and that is, if you could bring up the first poll, please. Do you feel your administration school will provide the technology and supplies necessary for you to be effective in providing remote art instructions? There's 3 options here. I feel supported, I feel somewhat supported, I do not feel supported. We'll take about maybe 20 more seconds on this poll. Okay, thank you for your responses. So as you can see here, we have kind of a middle of the road. I feel somewhat supported at 55%. 39 participants said that they were at 55%. I feel somewhat supported. I do not feel supported. 17, just 24%. And 15 people said that they feel completely supported at this time. Thank you for taking that poll. Now we will, before I hand my portion off to our next presenter, I will finish with our instructional needs for students. So next we're going to take a look at that. And one of the things that we really felt strongly about that was needed this year were some of the essential technology needs for the remote classroom and even for hybrid classroom teaching. We're asking that every arts teacher or arts student have a Chromebook with a camera that's not shared with siblings and a Wi-Fi hotspot. For music and performing arts students, we're advocating for wired headphones with a microphone. And for dance and performing arts students, we're advocating for wireless headphones with a microphone, which will allow students to move during online lessons and while working independently on coursework and creative projects. This was something that our Arts Committee agreed that this was a major issue where a lot of students or other siblings were in the room together, where it was very difficult to hear or conduct classes with multiple classrooms happening at the same time. And so we definitely want to get headphones to every student. At this time, I'm going to hand off my portion to Whitney, who's going to talk to you about some of the budgets and other things next in the presentation.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. Hi, my name is Whitney Huber. I'm the visual arts teacher at Curtis Elementary, and I'll be presenting our suggestions for remote learning supplies for each arts subject, so the specific arts subjects. We are recommending $50 per student for essential art supplies. These funds would pay for pre-made supply kits or for supplies for creating those kits to be distributed to our students. We're asking that these funds be listed as their own art-specific budget line so that they would remain dedicated for the arts. Next slide. And if you would like to follow along on page 5, around the bottom of page 5 of the PDF is where you will see these lists of suggested supplies for the packs of students. So we've created suggested supply lists for arts, music, dance, and drama. We know that these lists are going to seem generous, but we've been operating on what we know and believe to be best for our students and for our programs. And then we're hoping to land on some spot that's sufficient for our needs. So I'm going to read through each list quickly, but again, if you want to follow along and maybe look a little more in detail at your specific arts area, you can find the lists beginning at the bottom of page 5 on the PDF. If there's something that you think should be on your specific art subject list and isn't there, please go ahead and enter it into the Q&A and indicate what is your art subject so we know what type of arts teacher that you are, and then we'll be compiling that feedback. So here's our list for elementary visual arts students. We're suggesting a portfolio, copy paper, project paper, a small and a large sketchbook, glue sticks, markers, colored pencils, polymer clay, model magic, watercolors, oil pastels, a sewing needle, and funds to pay for digital subscriptions. Next slide. For each high school visual arts student, we're suggesting a small and a large sketchbook, a drawing set, colored pencils, watercolor pencils, markers, glue sticks, oil pastels, chalk pastels, acrylic paints, watercolors, and funds to pay for digital subscriptions. Next slide. Okay, so for music, remember that we included the wired microphones for every student as part of the essential tech needs. In addition, for each music student, pre-K through 2nd grade, we're suggesting Kit H, which has rhythm sticks, a glockenspiel, a music scarf, a drum, an egg shaker, and we're also recommending a composition book and a pencil for each student. For every music student who is in grades 3 through 5, we're suggesting Kit K, which has maracas, a steel triangle, a crow sounder, rhythm sticks, sand blocks, and a recorder, plus a composition book and a pencil. Next slide. For music students in grades 6 through 8, we're suggesting kit JB, which has a finger shaker, a gallon bucket with drumsticks, a boom whacker, a backpack, a ukulele and a tuner, plus a composition book and a pencil. For each high school music student, we're suggesting $20 per student, could be used as needed. We have a list of some suggestions here, plus a composition book and a pencil. Next slide. Okay, and for dance and drama, just remember that we are requesting a wireless microphone for every student as part of our essential tech needs for dance and for performing arts students. In addition, for each elementary dance student, we're suggesting a movement scarf, a ribbon stick, an egg shaker, a stuffed animal prop, word picture cards, a small whiteboard with markers, a bag or a container to put these things in, and the Dance Maker app. For each high school dance student, we're suggesting TheraBands, turnboards, a yoga mat and a block, a small whiteboard with markers, a bag or a container to hold the supplies. And for all drama students, we're suggesting funds for storybooks and digital subscriptions, rights to shows, mini props like blank masks or creation kits, plus a composition book and a pencil. So again, these are our suggested lists. And if you would like to make a comment or something that you think maybe should be on the list, something that appears to be missing, you can do that in the Q&A. Just be sure to know what is your art subject. All right, I'm going to pass the mic to Katrina Barge, who will discuss our draft recommendations for administrative support.
Hi, my name is Katrina Barge, and I teach visual arts at Oriole Park. And I am going to talk a little bit about all the administrative supports and things that go into scheduling and such. So this section touches on the necessary supports that arts teachers will need from their administration. One of the first topics that we'll be discussing is scheduling, but before we begin, we'd like to take a poll. So if they can pull that up. In this poll, we're asking is, are the unique needs of your art form being considered in scheduling? So have you been contacted? Do your principals do you think that the principals are taking into account what you need for your scheduling? Give you about 30 more seconds. About 10 more seconds. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead to the next part. So you can go, thank you for sharing those results. And so we can see a lot, this is some data that we really wanted to have to kind of show with when we talk to the departments of arts ed, that a lot of arts teachers don't feel that their unique arts classes are being considered. So we're hoping to give some guidance on what we can do to make sure that we are supported. So you can go to the next slide. So in this slide, scheduling is an issue when it comes to designing remote learning instruction. We've made suggestions for administration and specialist teams to discuss and come to a common agreement on what works best for their students in their specific schools. This may require some advocacy on your part prior to the beginning of school. In elementary schools, schedules should support a reasonable number of classes for all K-8 specialist teachers to allow for quality remote instruction and feedback. This may vary depending on the number of arts and specialized content areas provided at your specific school. Some schools have foreign languages as well as their arts classes, so it just depends on how many you have. Schedules allowing students to attend one specialized arts class for 3 to 5 week rotations are encouraged. This allows students and families, as well as the teachers, to focus on one specialized class at a time and allows students to be exposed to all of the specialized classes over the time that we meet remotely. We can move on to the next slide. In remote learning, we talk about synchronous and asynchronous learning. Those are very remote buzzwords. I will be defining these terms as we move along, and the Arts Committee is advocating for you and your administration to address synchronous and asynchronous learning requirements on grade level bands to make it manageable for students, families, and teachers. So let's begin with synchronous learning. Synchronous learning is real-time learning, live virtual instruction. We feel the methods and quantities should be age appropriate and realistic for those providing quality remote arts instruction. So I'm going to give a few examples now. So for example, pre-K to second grade band is scheduling a whole class instruction on Google Meets for approximately 25 minutes every other week or on a rotation, as mentioned before, would be age appropriate given their limited attention spans. For third through a fifth grade band, scheduling weekly small group sessions in Google Meets for approximately 25 minutes, in which in-person instructions could result in mini projects or content-specific activities that we feel would be appropriate. And for middle and high school students who may be more independent learners, pre-recorded instructional videos made available in the Google Classroom assignments, culminating in larger projects or performances, could be partnered with 2 to 5 hours of weekly office hours. By scheduling office hours, students who may need one-on-one instruction will have teachers available for support. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So the next slides, we're going to talk about asynchronous learning. Asynchronous learning happens on your schedule. It's not live. Again, we're advocating for you and your administration to address synchronous and asynchronous learning requirements in grade level bands to make it manageable. Asynchronous learning could be pre-recorded video instruction, or it could be providing paper packets or online resources that you're requesting students do. And both of these would be required, would have students being required to work and post their progress independently within Google Classroom or some other platform. We're requesting that administrators clarify if synchronous, asynchronous, or a hybrid of the two is required by the arts teacher. We're advocating that admin work with the arts teachers and that the requirements for instruction remain consistent within the quarter, that they do not change from the beginning to the end. Students, families, and teachers need consistency. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So remote learning requires additional time to record and edit supplemental video instruction in all subject matters. This is a needed recommendation to the board, which will hopefully be taken into account beyond our classes. To provide quality instruction that is supportive of all students and their families, we are requesting 3 hours of preparation time for every instructional hour requested or scheduled. Pre-recorded content is critical to students who may not be able to attend a live instruction, as well as helping families understand any specialized content and to better support their students. We are also requesting limits for grading requirements. Elementary teachers could be instructing hundreds of students at one time, creating difficulty to give constructive, formative feedback while students are in process. High school and advanced arts and ensemble classes could have large groups of students, increasing their numbers of grades that are required weekly. We're advocating that the requirements mirror normal in-person instruction, production, and creation. For example, in an elementary arts class, that would include 1 to 2 projects during a quarter or preparing for 1 performance. For high school, when students meet daily or within a block schedule, they're able to complete 1 to 3 projects per quarter. And we're asking that that be the same in remote as it is in the in-person learning. You can go ahead and go to the next slide for me. Remote learning can create difficulties in the grading process, as seen in spring. We must advocate for all of our students to have clear and consistent grading. We are requesting that CPS put in equitable policies for students who may have extenuating circumstances, sickness, lack of internet connectivity, or inconsistent access to materials. We're requesting a consistent explanation of what is to be expected for our grading before the quarter begins, and expectations should not be changed. In the arts, in order to provide students with the best support necessary during remote learning, we are requesting a cap on students or a rotation of grade band submission dates. A rotating schedule of submission can provide students and families a clear pathway to completion, as well as give appropriate time to grade and provide feedback for our students that's not overwhelming to them or us. As said several times, parents and students and teachers need consistency, and we believe that these recommendations can provide that. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. As we've said, consistency is key. Our goal and hope is that CPS will listen and address our needs with dignity and respect. All teachers are creating a new way of learning during this difficult time. In order to help ease the social and emotional learning styles of our students, we must advocate for equity and importance of all subjects. The outlet our classes can provide is an emotional break within a rigorous remote schedule, just as it is during in-person learning. We thank you for your time and for hearing our recommendations. And in order to complete and get some more feedback, we have another poll question. So we can go ahead now. So one is to ask you how you feel about this plan that we presented by the CTU Arts Committee. Do you think that this is a supportive plan, or you somewhat feel like it's a supportive plan, or you do not support the plan? About 30 more seconds. About 10 more seconds. Okay, that's good. Thank you. And then we had one more poll question, I believe, to ask how you could help us and help us for advocating. So you pop it up all right through it. So we're asking what you can do and what you're willing to do to secure a better remote learning for arts educators, whether that's talking to somebody about today's webinar and what was discussed, social media posts, talking with a school delegate or the PPC, joining the Arts Committee, or all of the above. You can click as many as you want. About 30 seconds. About 10 seconds. Excellent, thank you. So this gives us information to try to figure out how we need to advocate in the future. And what we're going to put up is our last slide really quick, and that's the bit.ly. So right there is an exit slip that at some point we would love for you to fill out for us. That kind of gives us another way to hear feedback specifically for your school and for what you think we need. And we will also be sending that out in an email tomorrow. So if you miss it, don't worry too much. We'll make sure you get covered. And I'm going to go ahead now and turn this over to Jen Johnson and our CTU VP, Stacey Davis-Gates.
Thank you so much, Gina, Whitney, Fabian, and Katrina. Just want to, again, thank the CTU Arts Committee members who spent a lot of time, energy, and effort putting really a lot of energy and thought into this draft plan. Again, this is a plan that they want your feedback on because they want us to collectively, right, fight for CPS to actually make remote learning for the arts work. None of this is going to happen, though, without our advocacy, and that's why that last question is so important. This is what we know will be good for our students and for our educators and what we want, but CPS doesn't just roll over and give us what we want, right? We need your help to give us some feedback, but also then to talk about this with your colleagues, with parents and families. How amazing would it be is if CPS treated the arts with respect, provided the supplies that they needed, and gave you as educators the time in order to do it well. So I'm going to introduce Vice President Stacey Davis-Gates, who's joining us to say a few words to you guys as well. We had almost 100 people on. This is awesome. Unmute. Stacey, you're muted. Yep, Zoom.
So I said all the really important stuff when I was on mute, so I'll make it close quick. First off, thank you so much for really and truly being leaders and putting this together. I think what is most impressive about it is that, number one, we recognize the deficiencies in remote learning immediately. We're not saying that remote learning is the thing. It is the thing because we're in a pandemic. And I need everyone to center that. Like, we ain't just doing this because we have nothing else to do. We're doing this because the moment requires us to be safe and healthy. The moment requires us to acknowledge the humanity of our colleagues, of ourselves, of our families, of our students and their families. Heck, all of Chicago, because we know based on the data that we're getting back from all over this country, all over this world, that schools can become vectors for this pandemic. And so you all are being very responsible, you're being very clear, and you're putting forth clarity for leaders to take to the virtual bargaining table, for us to demand through our communications out to our members, but also to the broader public. You know, and I want to tell you how important this is, because right now I'm paying attention to New York City, that, you know, they're slated to open. Their teachers are like frustrated to no end about their union leadership and not bringing forth, you know, a fight. Get this, in New York, the principals have said their schools can't open. And because the principals are saying it, which, like, let's sit back for a moment and like recognize what that ain't in Chicago. Principals were calling us talking about, can you guys please stop this plan from happening, because, you know, it's going to happen. That being said, I just want you to recognize that your ability to not just offer clarity, to offer a complete plan and be willing to organize for that plan is what sets us apart from most any place in education right now. And so we are only as strong as a union as all of our parts are. So thank you so much for putting this together. It is a lot to think through, but it is also very clear and specific. It leaves very little questions. You know, I see faces on here that were a part of the Organizing Institute. I see faces on here who are always, you know, in the mix. And I also see new faces on here. And so that's most important as well. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. This was wonderful. I appreciate all the time, Jen, that you're spending with these lovely people and putting it together, because she doesn't sleep. She only goes to the bathroom once every 2 days. She lives in that chair, in that same spot, like 24 hours a day. Yeah, I'm kidding. I'm giving her a hard time if you can't tell. But I appreciate all the work you all are doing. Thank you so much.
Stacey, we appreciate you, and we appreciate you being out in front on this, taking the hits for our full membership. This is a fight. Everything's a fight with CPS, right? And I think some of you have saw this presentation and you're like, is CPS really going to give us wireless headphones? They should, right? But we got to fight for this stuff, right? We got to fight for what makes our educational experience for our students and ourselves what we know we deserve it to be. So again, you can access the PDF to the draft plan in the MemberLink portal. You've got the exit slip where you can provide additional feedback. And we're going to see if we can take a few live questions. You know, I wish there was an easy way to answer that question, right? Because we've waited and fought for a month just for them to announce remote learning. We were ready to be working on this a month ago, and the mayor and the school district set us behind. So, you know, our plan is to be at the table every week. We were at the table last week. We're at the table this week. We wanted to meet with you as soon as this draft plan by the committee was put together, and we're going to bring it to CPS ASAP. We've actually had, the committee has had a couple meetings with representative from the Department of Arts already. So they've shared some general ideas, and we're going to try to bring them specifically to the table. But, you know, we don't know what CPS is going to do. Our work is to promote the things that we think we need, talk to our colleagues, talk to parents and families, you know, post on social media, like how great would it be if our students had these supplies? How great would it be if we had enough time to actually prepare to do great arts instruction remotely? So I can't give you the hard answer on that. We want this landed ASAP next week before school goes back, but it's going to be on us collectively to help advocate for CPS to agree and agree quickly. But, you know, the needs aren't going to go away even when we start the school year. We're going to have needs all year. So if we don't get everything we want right away, we're just going to keep fighting because our students' needs and our school's needs are great. Did anybody else on the committee want to add to that, Stacey? Yeah, go ahead, Stacey, and then we'll see if anybody on the committee.
Yeah, really quick follow-up to what Jen said is that you all will be receiving an e-blast from us within the next hour and a half that basically details that the parents we serve in Chicago agree with us, overwhelmingly agree with us when it comes to what type of remote learning we should be offering. And so expect that. And I hope that that information gives you some confidence and some courage to, you know, engage parents on a micro level about their needs and how we partner together effectively going into the school year. You are not the hated person. In fact, people in Chicago trust you. Like, they trust you. They depend on your guides and your expertise. Don't let the Stockholm effect of working in CPS make you believe that the world is against you. It's just the mayor and CPS.
Thank you, Stacey. Did anybody else from the committee want to speak to this, or shall I take the next question? Next question. Okay, great. Yeah, we don't have an answer for that either, but would the committee members like to speak to what they, you know, would like to see and some of the challenges that we've discussed as a committee about arts partners? Gina?
There are some challenges around art partners right now, and there were actually questions in the Q&A about arts partnerships also, because CPS is not allowing arts partners to go into the Google Meets classrooms. That is something that we do need to bring up with the Department of the Arts if you're committed to working with arts partners. Definitely, we will be talking to the Department of the Arts again and see what they say about that, because a lot of these things are problems that nobody foresaw in the fall, and if we can write them down and have them be points of discussion, we will definitely add them to the list.
Thanks for that, Gina, and thanks for these questions. I think we're going to take a couple more questions and then we'll move to. We 100% agree with you. And this came up in bargaining last week, actually. CPS has been very clear that they want to push everybody to use the Google platform. They are seemingly much more invested in the tracking data that everyone being on a single use platform, or not a single use, but a single platform provides them, then what's actually pedagogically appropriate for you in your particular classroom or your particular students and grade level. They want everybody on Google because they can track who's logging in and logging off. And we've said to them at the table, data, great, we get it, you know, but this is about pedagogy. This is about remote learning being better than it was in the spring. But in the spring, we actually had the option of using the opt-out form and allowing folks to use Zoom. And I know Seesaw and all these other platforms have been really critical. So we continue to tell CPS that this is going to not be pedagogically or instructionally or best for parents and students and families. And they're pretty dedicated to this. And in some ways, they do have kind of a management right to tell us like where we're going to do our work. And we will continue to point out that this will be problematic. And I know we've tried to tell them that there's issues with like breakouts in Google, and they've said they're talking to the developers. So again, they seem to be much more interested in data and tracking us and holding us accountable and watching who's, you know, what students are logging on than they do about making the right decision for platforms in terms of pedagogy. So that's an honest answer about what CPS seems to prioritize right now. I think we're going to take, did anybody want to add anything? I'm sorry, committee on platforms. Okay, I think we had one more question. Thank you for that question. I think this is something that the committee has definitely been thinking about and knows that each school is slightly different also. So I'm going to ask if any of the committee members kind of want to speak to our thinking around this question.
I can talk a little bit about it. So we went back and forth a lot trying to figure out how specifically elementary teachers who have anywhere from 700 to 900 students, how this would work with scheduling. And so that's one of the things we said with the grade bands is that an easy way, instead of saying you're going to see everybody every week, would be saying, okay, you're going to see grade bands kindergarten through second during the first 4 weeks, and then the other arts teacher is going to see the grades 3 through 5th, and then they would rotate. And that's kind of depending on how many different specialized areas you have. Like we have 4 at our school, but some schools have 5 or some schools have 2 or 3. And so that's kind of a conversation that you would have with your principal about how that rotation might work. But with that rotation, you would limit your students, and also it would allow parents to say, okay, we have 5 weeks to figure out the arts, and then afterwards, then they would go on to like their music classes. And it's not, okay, we have to figure out arts and music and PE and all of these things all at one time. So that's one recommendation. And then the other recommendation would be to do some sort of cap, and then you would see those other students later. And that's kind of a conversation you would have to have with your administration. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to try to advocate for guidelines and principles, and also make sure that we recognize that each school is going to be a little different, but that was a great question. I think we are going to have time for one more. Maybe the committee folks want to talk about what typically happens with supply lists, but I just want to reiterate what we are presenting today is what we're advocating for. We believe that CPS ought to be providing a $50 per student per art subject budget to each student in all of our schools, so that schools can purchase the supply kits and distribute them. And the committee members have put together these recommended lists, right? To be able to say, here's what that could get you, and here's how it would be great. But we know that there are schools that have arts budgets and there are schools that don't, and some folks might be trying to put some materials out there and others aren't. And what we're saying is that it shouldn't be like that. It should be equitable. All of our students should be given a budget. CPS should dedicate a central budget, provide it to every school, so that students all get supplies. But does someone want to speak to kind of the typical way those supply lists go? Yeah, go ahead, Gina.
So I think a couple of things. You might want to actually clarify with your principal if you're giving a supply list to parents and the expectation that they're going to buy the supplies, or are you giving him a list of items that you're going to purchase and put a supply kit together, because we understand that some schools have already put together supply kits. Some schools are planning on putting together supply kits. And just like Jen said, it's really important that we all get an equal budget. Like and this is something that kept popping up in the chat. If a student, especially at like the high school level, is in, or even the elementary school level, in music and art and dance, it's not $50 per kid, it's $50 per student per arts elective. So you're not splitting that $50 with all of the other arts electives at your school. And we put together those supply kits specifically as recommendations. If CPS is like, no, we're going to buy all of these supplies, then we're saying this is like baseline. Our kids need supplies. These are the supplies they need. But really, they should be giving us the money and trusting us to buy our own supplies and our budgets. As for technology, if the teachers don't have technology and we don't have the training on how to use it, and the students don't have technology and they don't know, and they don't have training on how to use it, then all of remote learning sort of disintegrates. You know, it becomes more and more difficult for our students to do the work. They get, especially the little ones, get easily frustrated. Parents can get easily frustrated, and, teachers get easily frustrated. So that is something that we are going to ask for, is not just like, hurl technology at us and not give us any information on how to use it, but actually teach us how to use it. Because there are ways to do workarounds with some things in Google Meets, but you have to be trained on that.
That's right.
So,
that's right. And you should know that the CTU, on behalf of all members, right, is advocating for adequate devices, internet connection, and training and support, and not just for teachers, right? We have support staff who are having to work from home and who should be able to work from home safely. We want to make sure our paraprofessionals have the software, devices, and the training they need, right? Our teacher assistants ought to be able to still teacher assist. Clerks ought to be able to do clerk work from home. So, CPS has done what they normally do. They tell you to sign up for Google Palooza. You try to sign up for those slots, they fill up, and you're like, dang, I got to do this on my own, I guess. Your individual tech coordinators in your school, they're feeling torn, right? Should they come into work if they're immune compromised and help? They can't do it all. And CPS appears to be giving families the runaround on getting devices. They tell them, call 773-553-KIDS. And then the person on the line says, call your principal. And the principal's like, call 773-55-KIDS. And people aren't getting devices. So, we hear you. We think a lot of people are doing this on their own because they are really thoughtful educators. I've heard people doing all kinds of PD this summer already. But what we're advocating for is that CPS start the school year in a smart way. The LA school district and union are coming to terms over, they're calling it a smart start, where there's time built into the calendar to actually do professional development on technology, where there's time to connect with families, right? And we're advocating for something similar. The time ought to be built in to provide the professional development opportunities, to provide the technology, and to get everybody up to speed. We shouldn't just rush headlong into a regular school schedule. We should do this well. And that's what we're advocating at the CTU level. So again, the degree to which we win depends on how well we stick together and how we advocate collectively. So we're gonna move to close, but I think what we heard was really good feedback today on the draft plan that the committee put together. They're gonna read your questions, they're gonna read the exit slip. They are meticulous arts educators, and we're gonna bring these proposals to the Department of Arts at CPS, bring them to the bargaining table. And we need you to be talking with your other arts colleagues who didn't make this webinar today about what you heard, that we need materials, we need training, we need collaboration time. We need our students to have schedules that work and incorporate the arts and don't shortchange arts programs. And we need you to advocate and say that parents ought to be helping us advocate. Parents know that arts education is a hugely important outlet for their students. Not only does it provide critical thinking skills, it creates opportunities for self-expression, for growth, for coping with this moment. connecting to the socio-emotional needs. So we've got to help remind our families why it's so important that CPS take our arts demands seriously and actually agrees to them. So I'm going to turn it back though to Gina to close us out and see if there's a few final words.
I just want to thank everybody for coming today. We have been working very, very hard, sometimes twice a week over the summer, to put together both the remote learning plan and the back to school plan. And hopefully we will have another webinar when it is actually at a point where we can go back to school and talk about doing that safely. You know, I really do ask you from the bottom of my heart, you all have that PDF. Please share it out with the people in your departments, share it out with your arts friends, share it with everybody. We want as much feedback as humanly possible before we actually start really advocating for those things. I do truly appreciate the people who asked questions in the Q&A, and I hope that we were able to answer them, and everyone else. If you are interested in joining the CTU Arts Committee, please go to the committee's page on the CTU website. We are always looking for more people and more voices in every single discipline and in every single grade level that we possibly can have it. We love everyone on this committee, and we have lots of equity of voice, and it's pretty, everyone that worked really hard is really amazing. And thank you all of the CTU Arts Committee for working as hard as you have. And thank you everyone for coming, but really, Arts Committee, you guys are the best. So thank you and have a great day.